Yo, what's up YouTube? It's your boy Damontae bringing you a banger. Don't forget to follow on my Twitch, please. This is where we have daily content. So, I actually had plans on throwing together a video that contained like these 220 builds. All of them having different guns, different skills, different weapons, different abilities, and whatever you want to call it, but for some odd reason, when I got on today, every one of my builds were locked, or whatever you want to call it. I had to go through and... So as a quick recap, before Payday 2 ended its service and live service and updates and whatnot, it actually sold its matchmaking over to Epic Games, which it also gave the game for free over at Epic Games, which the players on Steam were no longer really capable of playing the game, and that really made a lot of people upset. A lot of, content creators left the game at this point. But to also keep in mind, Steam has had the matchmaking, and it has been stable for how many years? For maybe about 10? But to get into the more important aspects, is that Starbreeze had sold Payday 2's matchmaking from Steam to Epic Games for money. They did this all for monetary value. They didn't consider the community's feelings, the already established community on Steam, and etc. Throughout pretty much every Payday 2 update, Starbreeze, Overkill, whatever you want to call them, always decide to touch something that they shouldn't be doing and then never include it inside the patch notes. So in this instance, maybe the previous patch had done something to, the player's inventory screen, so maybe the 15 builds got changed in some way, so then the next update they fixed it because things started shuffling around for no reason, right? But to begin with, they never included in any of the other patch notes that they even touched this inventory screen. But when they did it on this one, any builds that you had been disappeared. So if you had a mod that gave you more, all of them are gone. Now obviously the mod warns you about this. If you remove the mod, you lose all your builds basically. It's already, a thing that's stated before you download the mod. But it's deliberate from the creator's update, which had destroyed everyone's builds. They reset everybody's builds. Every build became locked. Then days later, the release of Payday 3 and the pre-release of Payday 3 has dawned us. And the pre-release went fantastic. It was amazing. But then when the actual release date came out, that's where things really took a toll. So for the players that ordered either the gold or silver edition, got 3 days in advance, which is the pre-release of Payday 3, and they got to play the game 3 days ahead of everyone else. Well, unless you was a PS5 player. If you even bought this version of the game, you didn't get the 3 days in advance. From what I understand, the PS5 players actually were given the beta version of the game and had actually no access to even play the beta version of the game, so therefore they actually were kind of missing out of their 3 days of Payday 3. Now the following week of Payday 3's first release, the servers died for about 5 to 7 days. Now, in this time period, you have legit new players who have never played the franchise. You've got players coming and returning from, the previous Payday 2, Payday the Heist. And then you've got, everyone else in between. Maybe people that have heard about the game, played the game one time, maybe played the demo of Payday 2, etc. You've got a bunch of eyes on the game, and servers die for about a week. Starbreeze announced that there's going to be an update on October 5th. Now this update never reaches the dawn of light until a month later, and throughout this whole time period, the Starbreeze company, Overkill, whichever you'd like to refer to them as, actually stayed silent all the way up until days before the release. That resulted in, for Steam at least, 90% of the player base has left the game completely, meaning they haven't opened the game, launched the game, or played the game, etc. That's what this is understanding of. But you also have to keep in mind that Xbox players have lost a good portion of their players, and PS5 players have also lost a good portion of their players. So in the big scheme of things, they may only have anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 players, if they're lucky, playing their game. I mean, if you just take a look at the current Payday 3 player base daily, and the hourly look at it, you're seeing it go from the 300s to barely making it to the thousands each day. Then October 3rd came. That's when the very first update of Payday 3 dawned the light. It contains hundreds of fixes through every heist, fixing multiple different things through audio issues, texture issues, fixing bugs throughout, missions, things that, are working improper, certain areas that are labeled incorrectly. They have tried to address the balancing issues with some of the skills. They are trying to address, some things why people aren't getting their charms. Long story short, it seems they didn't do a lot of testing on their game here. Now, if you actually go back to the beta make of Payday 3 when they released, where you had to get an invite to Payday 3's beta, and then they released a singular beta that everyone can join into, if you realize that the beta make was the same as the full game, that's where some people should have immediately started making issues with the game. And also, people still aren't getting their charms. Now, if we do take a look back onto Payday 2, and any of the heists they started releasing after Border Crossing, or pretty much any of the heists they ever released for Payday 2, there was a glaring issue with pretty much any heist they ever released, and it was always that they never tested it, it seemed. And if they did test it, it was always like a one-time play and then that was it. Because you could play the mission and find numerous bugs with just first time playing, and if you started to play the mission more than first time playing, you would consider even more bugs to be, found, and glitches and etc. So with this being in mind, you can already assume that Payday 3's testing is pretty much out the window, the same as it was for Payday 2. And an obvious case of no testing is this right here. They are, mentioning how the armor is really overused and how the armor is the meta, basically. But if you understand how the skills are laid out in Payday 3, they have no life regen in any form of the skills. The only way you can regen life in Payday 3 is by trading civilians for first aid kits, trading law enforcement for first aid kits, natural first aid kits that are on the map, assets that you can buy med bags, teammates that'll bring med bags, and that's it. That's the only way that you get health back in Payday 3. So with a glaring issue of no health regeneration in any of the skill trees, obviously armor's the only way to play. You guys remember how PS5 players didn't get a chance to play the 3-day pre-release? Well, at least you guys get your pre-order edition items. Now with the new update for Payday 3 that came out that received 0 new content, you can see that the player base for, Payday 3 hasn't grown. It's actually is continuously dropping, and now it's getting to the point to where it's in the thousands to 300 range. And this is where you gotta ask the question, can they even come back from this? Yes and no, and I'll explain for my perspective both reasons. Let's start out with the easier one, which would be no, they can't come back from it, and this would be my perspective as the reason why. So they still have no new content in the game, and the first, in quotations, new content to surface the game will be old heists from Payday 2. Now, the reason why this isn't going to be a good selling point is because this only really appeals to the people that are wanting these heists, specifically, and to the new player base that have never experienced these heists even in Payday 2. So being a player of Payday 2 with over 13,000 hours played, these would be the heists that I wouldn't even think of bringing in first. I would bring things like Hoxton Breakout, Firestarter, some things that would be more monumental to Payday 2. Do you guys remember how I mentioned earlier that on the release date, they had a lot of people that were new to the game that have never played the series before, and this is their first time ever experiencing a Payday game, and you can see it in the reviews.
And And now it's time to look towards the future. Very soon you'll be able to download Payday 3's first free content update. In this update, you'll be able to play 2 legacy heists from Payday 2. There are a lot of fan favorites out there, but we have decided to start with bringing back Cook-Off and Murky Station.
Some may come to wonder as to why everyone is thumbsing down the game, but what would be the reason for all this? Can you give us an explanation as to why? What's happening? And the answer is extremely easy. They released a game that has 8 heists, slideshows as your cutscenes. They released 17 guns with extremely limited customizable options. To further that, the guns, when you customize them, don't really get much of a difference when playing with them in that method. You know, armor's pretty much the only way to play because they didn't touch up on any skills for health. It's a lot of glaring issues. And then not to mention, every heist pretty much almost shares the same objectives. You have keypads, you've got codes, QR codes, stand in certain areas to unlock geocode. It's all almost the same objectives on every mission, and it gets old extremely quick. And not to mention, if you're playing loud, you're pretty much spending the same skills in the same areas every time, and the only thing that ever differentiates skill usage would be the gun that you're using, and it's only a couple points, like 3 to 5 basically, that change. When they come out with Payday 3 with this amount of content, when Payday 2 has like 10, even like 15 times more content, that's where there's issues. Because you can't go from a game that has almost unlimited options to a game that basically limits the player's options to force it into more of a casual style play. Because Payday 2 was nothing like that. Yes, it has a lot of casual play to it, but it more appealed to the people that were wanting to get really good and be, in quotations, the best at what they're wanting to do. So for Payday 3 and the first update that actually came out, they had came through and they had mentioned some stuff basically stating that the only way that they can do updates is if they send it to Sony and Sony gives them the okay. They send it to Microsoft and Microsoft gives them the okay. And then they send it to Valve and then Valve gives them the okay. And then they're able to start working on the testing, the update. And then after mentioning that, they also further mention that each update, and this is simpler terms because they don't mention it like this, but this is simpler terms. Each update of Payday 3 would have reset the player progress, everything that would have, changed. Any gun that got added, any map that got added, any, skills that got changed, it would have, reset the player progress each and every time. And then one of my last points as to why they may not be able to really recover from this is that they also mentioned one of their most recent dev diaries is that their first year is only going to contain 4 DLCs. And for the people that bought the gold version of the game, they're only getting 4 DLCs and they paid $90 for that. And then to furthermore, some of the, in quotations, free content is literally just new, or not even new, it's just Cook-Off and Murky Station reimagined inside Payday 3. That's the stuff that really gets people aggravated. Everyone is wanting new things, everyone is wanting new heist. If you were wanting to release Reimagine Heist, you would do that on day 1. That's what everyone wants here. They don't want you to consistently release Legacy Heist as free updates and then charge the player base for actual new heist. That's the last thing people actually want here. Now, as to how they actually can recover Payday 3 and make it like a game that people may actually enjoy and want to play, it's gonna take a lot of work. But from what I understand, the publisher of Payday 3 isn't really happy in this current standpoint, which could also, lead into the, scenario of the game no longer being a thing after a year. Long story short, what I'm saying is that the publisher could end the support of Payday 3 after its contract is over, is what I'm getting to here. Some of the things they need to do to make the game better for the players is, as they did fix so many bugs, but the main thing is that I want to mention this real quick, and this may get some hate on me, and I'm not hating on anybody, but they had beta testers that they flew out to play the game. They also had like random YouTubers that they flew out to play the game. They also had, Overkill Starbreeze partners that did it as well. Then they had the closed beta, which was for testing like the server integrity or something, and then another, beta test, which was the same thing, like testing the server or some weird stuff. Basically what I'm getting to here is that if the game can be released with over hundreds and hundreds of bugs and very, very little content, you can only really look at the partners and the people that flew out there and beta tested the game. It's really the only people you can really think, what's really going on here? Because I'll tell you from my perspective, the Overkill partners generally are kissing butt to the Overkill, updates, and every time something, is released, it's usually, they're saying, oh, this is so amazing. And then the same thing is said for when they more than likely tested the game, because everything I just mentioned is for Payday 2. This is how they would react for everything in Payday 2. So then if they were flown out to, wherever to test the game, and then they also did like a closed beta and tested the game and then opened it up to the public to test the game, like, why didn't the partners give honest opinions on the game instead of brown-nosing Starbreeze? That's the biggest issue here. You need to be holding your partners accountable and, your beta testers accountable here. Why did everyone just allow this to go through? Now, I'm not saying the game isn't a great game at all. This game is amazing, it has a lot of potential, but that is one of the biggest issues if you have beta testers not actually telling you what is wrong with your game. If you have partners that are partnered with your game not actually telling you what's wrong with your game. That's the stuff that'll doom the game in the end. So by simply adding things like a single player or an offline mode, you can easily get more of your players back into the game in an instant, because that's what a lot of people actually want to do before playing with other people sometimes. The XP system currently isn't really that good of an XP system, and I'll explain why. Is because it's only based on challenges. I know on one of the most recent updates they've changed something with the XP, but basically this is how it needs to be. How Payday 2 is current day, how some heist will give you XP for your bags, and then some are based on like the objective, and I think that's on like pretty much all the heists, because back then it wasn't like that, but then they had changed the mechanics of the game to be like that. So why didn't they just incorporate something like this into Payday 3? Why would they base everything off of completing a challenge? That never made sense to begin with, and then now that they've even, in quotations, changed it a little bit, they still need to make sure that, bags are giving you XP, objectives are giving you XP, completions are giving you XP, like everything that, should be doing it, not just completing a challenge, because you don't even need to complete a mission in that standpoint. Back in the day in Payday 2, you would join a low-level player playing Death Sentence, carry them through the mission, and then you'd build a relationship sticking around with this person, playing, a couple more heists, and then you guys became great friends and played the game years to come. Well, in Payday 3 currently, anytime that you join a lobby and you finish a mission, you just disconnect, and if you are friends with that person, that's the only way you'll be able to reconnect into that lobby. They don't really have that same feel of where you can join a lobby, help some people out, and really feel good about it. Like, you don't really have any relationship building anymore with how the lobby system works. So changing the way these lobby system works is another main thing that needs to be done. And some of the main things that they could truly add to the game to make a more long-term form of content is not allowing just online play. Like, where is the whole infamy system at currently? Like, we get to 100, 150, and then that's it. Like, we need some form of a prestige infamy system again. We need some form of like daily challenges. I wasn't personally the most, favorable of them in Payday 2, but that did bring a lot of people to consistently play the game. So more daily challenges might be a thing. Might even possibly come up with some form of a PvP mode. That would be really interesting. There's other things like maybe like gauge package collectibles can be reintegrated. Maybe some form of other collectibles can be integrated. Maybe you can find maybe coins or something. Like, something needs to be integrated here. You can't just have 8 heists and a limited amount of guns with a limited amount of supplies. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I do really appreciate it. If there's anything that you guys think that they could do to make their game, be more playable for the coming future, please let me know in the comment section below. I do love the Payday series, so we are all rooting for Payday 3 to make the comeback. But for them to make the comeback, everyone in the player base needs to actually be real with the company and tell them what's genuinely wrong with their game so that they can actually fix it.